development explorations. Despite the pandemic upsetting our normal pace of life, it's wonderful to see this community still flourishing and thrive. Recently, brave individuals have shared their experiences with discrimination, assault, and sexual harassment within the game industry and our events. It's heartbreaking to witness how many people who have suffered at the hands of abusers within our industry and how many more continue to bear the pain in silence. It is imperative that we recognize the failures that led to these situations and come together to create solutions that ensure the game industry is inclusive, supportive, and safe for all. Each and every one of us can help our industry be safer and more inclusive. We encourage you to stand up for your fellow developers against any injustices you witness and know that the IGDA and the game industry at large will support you. If you are in need of support, please use our harassment resources or contact us. In order to support diversity within our industry, we cannot allow harassers and sexual misconduct to go unchecked. All of the efforts to recruit women are in vain if they are assaulted or made to feel unwelcome within our industry and its events. We must use this as a turning point so that we can ensure that game development and game developers are able to thrive. We must also recognize that change is needed from the top to be truly effective. This does not mean simply writing policies, but truly implementing, upholding, and living them. Our latest developer satisfaction survey showed that 71% of companies had non-discrimination policies and 64% had harassment policies, sexual harassment policies. But only 59% of those policies were adequately enforced, and 65% of people still believe that there was not equal opportunity within the game industry for all. The IGDA is working to create a compilation of resources for game development studio leadership to ensure the cultivation of safe, positive company culture. We need to fix the system from the top down and to uproot toxic cultures and harassment. For far too long, people in power have turned a blind eye to harassment allegations. We must stop this cycle and remove the poison that stops the growth of diversity within our industry. Together, we can condemn the failure of our industry's past and take the steps forward to enact the change in our industry to ensure that this wonderful, creative, diverse industry will support every person who contributes to it. Today, we have a special guest to talk more about this crisis within our industry and shed light on how we got to this point. I am pleased to welcome Brianna Wu, an expert game developer, Super PAC executive director, and a passionate advocate who has personally experienced the worst side of the game community.
Thank you so much, Renee. Oh my gosh, it is such an absolute honor to be here. Before I start, I just want to thank Larry. You are just a wonderful person. You're a force for good in this field. I also just want to recognize Renee. You're doing an amazing job running the IGDA. Everybody knows it. People are talking about it behind the scenes. So I just want to recognize that and thank you for that job. I know firsthand that being in charge of an organization like that is a lot of work. So I'm definitely rooting for you and the continued growth of the IGDA. I want to give you a little bit of background about myself, and I want to tell you about this talk tonight. It's going to be quick. For myself, in 2010, I saw this demo for the Unreal Engine on iPhone, and it absolutely blew my mind. And I had this moment where I could see the future. And I could tell that this was going to be the next 20 years of computing. When we had the mainframe come out, that was about 20 years. The PC, that was about 20 years. When I saw that on an iOS device, I knew that was going to be the future of gaming. So I scrimped together enough capital, and I started a dream, which was founding a studio where women could work as technical people, as creative people, and engineers. And I did what the internet's always telling women to do, that if you don't like games, go make your own. So I did. That happened in 2010. In 2014, we shipped Revolution 60, won 3 Game of the Year awards in mobile, which we are very proud about, and shipped a game that was it was basically a 2.5-hour animated movie with 14 different endings. I'm very, very proud of that. However, as we were shipping our game, something very dark had started to happen in the game industry. And looking back, we all know this is Gamergate. Many of my colleagues in the field had started to be picked off one by internet mobs. First it was a woman that spoke up on Giant Bomb's hiring decisions, where yet again they made decisions that excluded women, and she was harassed out of a career. This happened again and again and again and again. And even as I was trying to ship basically this 4-year project, I found myself being pushed to needing to speak out for my women colleagues. If you're not really aware of what happened to me, there's a terrible Law and Order episode about it. But the long story is this mob went after me with everything they could. They threw bricks through my window. They threatened to kill me. They sent me the most explicit death threats you could possibly imagine. They review bombed my studio's games. They hacked my bank account. They tried to destroy my reputation. It was absolutely brutal. After that, in 2016, Trump won, and I found myself wanting to take the higher profile I had from Gamergate and turn it around to fight for things I believe in. So for the last 3 years, I've been running for United States Congress in Massachusetts District 8, which has been one of the most amazing experiences of my entire life. I should actually be out there right now canvassing, but unfortunately with coronavirus, I had to withdraw. It's very hard to take on an incumbent when you can't canvass or hold events. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern from that. That's my background. When we're talking about recent events in the game industry, this is the one takeaway I want everyone here to really hear me on. After spending 3 years in the Democratic Party, state, local, national, working with people at the highest levels, this is what I really need every game developer here to really process. You are so much more talented than the average person working in politics and setting our national policy. One of the things that really stunned me running for office is how much skill overlap there is between running a game studio and running for office. Because think through this, okay? You've got, you're dealing with a player base constantly, or a voter base. You've got to constantly reach out to them, communicate with them. That's exactly the same. For me, I'm a project manager. Those skills are literally exactly the same. We instituted a Kanban board, and every single week we'd have a Scrum stand-up meeting. Everyone's working on their little thing, and it's an update. You are dealing with fundraising, literally the exact same as the game industry. Now, depending on your model, you're either talking to, a publisher or your crowdfunders, or in my case, donors. But the constant need to raise capital to keep the team going is absolutely the same. What is more challenging, actually, in the game industry is that the job itself, frankly, takes a smarter individual, just to speak really bluntly. I specialize in Unreal Engine, and trying to optimize draw calls or getting materials or certain maps working in across a wide range of devices, that's a technically complex topic. Micro-targeting a Facebook ad, in contrast, is not really as hard. And I say that not to critique my friends that work in politics, but to say to every single game developer here, you're smarter and more equipped to change the world than I think you understand. I've talked to so many people that have worked for the Obama administration or on successful Senate campaigns or governor's races. And I really mean this. I think my biggest takeaway from running for Congress is that the average person working in games is smarter, is better to think outside of the box, and is better equipped to kind of wield these tools of persuasion. So when we're talking about recent events in the game industry, and let's go through them. We have this trend of constant mass layoffs, which is devastating for people's careers and livelihood and financial security. We've got multiple very credible sexual assault allegations that have come to light, not just in indie studios, not just from Twitch personalities, but AAA studios, places with HR departments that should know better. We have three, an increasingly toxic player base. I have a friend of mine that had to get the basically the private detectives that work for a AAA studio watch outside his house because after a patch to a competitive shooter, someone had hired someone to kill him in a credible way, and it ended up leading to an arrest. That's not a normal kind of player base. We also have very frequently abusive working conditions. I've seen this firsthand. I live in Boston, and you can just go right down the street about 3 miles that way, and you're going to go to a college that charges about $60,000 a year to give you a game development degree. And they churn out kids like that. I get a lot of them that submit resumes to my studios. They come out and they need a job desperately. And just to speak really honestly, our industry far too often takes advantage of them. And the last kind of place where we are as an industry is it's really difficult these days for smaller game developers to survive. When I was first getting into the game industry, we had AAA games, but we had a very large roster of B-level studios. I think of Alpha Protocol all the time, this game that Sega made. It wasn't great, but it was a fun experience for $60. Those kinds of studios don't exist anymore. So when we're thinking about all of those issues, I just really want to stress to all of you, you are remarkably well equipped to go out and advocate for those issues, to make a dent in the things that you care about and that you find to be the most pressing. So I want to go back in time a little bit. Something I've done as a project manager quite a bit is I've asked myself how we got to this point. And I've read most of the major histories of the game industry at this point, kind of through a more feminist lens, I think, than the people that wrote them, perhaps. But there are really 5 events, I think, that brought our industry to the point that we're at now. And these are really interesting. So let me just walk you through our field for the last 30 years. And the big decisions that we made, I think, brought us to this point. I didn't know this until I read Console Wars, which is an excellent book. In 1985, when Nintendo was working to bring the Nintendo Entertainment System here to the United States, the Nintendo USA marketing people sat down and had a meeting. And the original plan for the NES was to market it to both girls and boys. And the few men that were in that meeting knocked the girls off the marketing plan. And as a result, everything you saw from that era, when the video game industry was really being built here in the United States in 1985, was marketed specifically to boys between 5 and 10. If you had Nintendo Power in that era like I did, you would get these beautiful posters that would come with it every month. It would have this, would have these images of Captain Commando or all these powerful men like the ones from Contra. And it was very much saying, you are our market. And I want to be clear that I think those are great games and great characters. But I think that one decision really, it made this industry start to think about ourselves, that this was a space for men. And when the Super Nintendo came out about 7 years later, they dusted off literally that same marketing plan, added 5 years on it, and said the Super Nintendo is marketed to boys between 5 and 15 now. So I think that was a really big turning point for our field. The second big turning point and this is so important, is Steptoe at XBLA. And I had the pleasure of doing a book launch with him before he unfortunately passed a few years ago. If you don't know Steptoe, he was the head of enforcement at Xbox Live. This is the first console that we put on the market. that had online capabilities. And let me tell you, this was a really fascinating era. Do you know that when people used to be banned from Xbox Live, they wouldn't get 3 strikes? They would get 1 strike. If they called someone a homophobic comment or a racial slur or something like that, it would actually get reported and a human would look at it. And then Steptoe ran this division of overseeing it. And when people didn't like their bans, because we would actually ban people from their Xbox console back then, they would actually put it online, the evidence of what they did, and it would all be out there in a public forum for people to see that it was either accurate or inaccurate. I think this was a pretty darn good way to start off the internet era of consoles. But something that happened as Microsoft decided to start growing more and more and more, Steptoe was trying to make decisions to keep people safe. And eventually Microsoft did not have his back and he ended up leaving. Today, if you look at XBLA, it is more of an automated system for responding for harassment reports and grouping all the bad actors together. I think that decision had major consequences to the kind of experience you have when you turn on an online game today. The other 3 moments I think really brought us here, they're quicker. The third was the bigger move online, because I think we can't talk about what's socially wrong with the game industry without talking about what's financially wrong with the game industry. And with the Xbox and later on with the 360, you saw this move online that really put the money men in charge at the AAA publishers. And whereas 10 years before, it had been more creative people at AAA studios that were, saying, this is our game design, this is the product that we ship. More and more and more, the money men tended to get involved with AAA development. And we started to see decisions being made with gameplay that were kind of contrary to the player experience. I think a perfect example of this is Assassin's Creed Odyssey, a fantastic game, but one where you're constantly being asked if you want to upgrade weapons to fight the soldiers. So you never know if you're failing because you didn't pay 99 cents or because you're just bad at the game. The fourth event is Steam pricing. I think Steam has really had an effect on our industry where it's really depressed the amount of money that people, the investors, are able to recoup from many games, and especially independent games. I'm sorry, y'all. My voice is giving out. 1 second. Excuse me. So I think Steam in the summer sale had a very big deleterious effect on our ability to recoup our investment. The fifth and last event I think that really drove us in this direction in the game industry is the App Store. And again, this is an economic decision. Apple really had a laissez-faire approach to the App Store. And whereas people initially came in and said, we're going to charge you $20 for our software, very soon we saw this race towards the bottom, with free being the norm. And of course, this makes sense for Apple because it leads to a cheap ecosystem of software for people to enjoy on Apple devices. But it's not great for the people that make software. And I would argue that lack of leadership was the fifth major event in our industry that brought us back to this point. So if we're thinking about leadership and thinking about these 5 events, just imagine if you were standing there at each of those moments. Imagine if you had been a woman in the room in 1985 and you could have told Nintendo, you know what? We need to make sure that women, young girls are included in our marketing plans. Let's make sure we make this a space for everyone and double our market share. That would have had huge effects on history. Think about Steptoe and XBLA. If with that very first console, if people at Microsoft had had his back and we hadn't moved over to this automated process and held people to stricter standards in how they conduct themselves online, Think about how many more women and queer people would be comfortable playing online games today. Think about how much bigger our market share would be. Think about being a leader as we were moving online and, the financial interests were getting more and more say with game design. Imagine if we could have thrown up a wall at that point to say, you know what, marketing, you go do your thing. We're over here, we're shipping games. We're going to do ours. Let's keep it that way. Think how much better and how more advanced the games would be today. Think about with Steam and this race to the bottom pricing there and how that's affected our whole field. Imagine if that hadn't happened and Steam had been more conscientious about keeping prices fair for video games. Imagine how many more developers would be employed today and would be able to make a living and afford a house and maybe even take a vacation every now and then. Imagine how much different the App Store would be today for game development if it wasn't all this in-app purchase garbage, but instead you truly had developers able to make a living on these devices working with this awesome hardware. So this is my message to everyone here. It just takes a single moment to stand up and really make your mark. Integrity really matters. And the choices we all make every single day, we can't see what they're going to be. So make the right ones. I've been thinking a lot about how we got the culture with game development that we have today. And I think one of the things that's really hard for people in the game industry is we have a self-conception of ourselves as the underdog. And I know this because I have that same self-conception, right? Like, I was pretty nerdy in high school. I didn't have that many friends. And, sometimes it's hard to think of myself as someone with power and responsibility. But the truth is, we do have that. And I think that so many of us, we're so used to that self-conception of I'm the good guy, I'm on the side of right, that it's really hard for us to see when we do wrong. But we all do. And I want to tell you some failures I've had leading my own game studio. I have failed at times to give people, my own employees on the autism spectrum, the support that they needed. It wasn't that I was malicious. I just did not have the level of education I should have had as a manager. That was my fault. I have initially not understood what my employees who were parents were needed and expected things from them career-wise that were unreasonable. That is a failure I have absolutely made. I have been too busy at times doing PR for my studio to hit development deadlines, and I've let my team down. That is my own failing. I think anyone that knows me well would say my biggest flaw can be my temper. And there have been times that my temper has gotten the best of me and created a situation that was unfair at work. I don't say any of these because I'm proud of them. I say this because I think there's a culture in our industry of not admitting these kinds of mistakes. And I think it's hard for us to move forward on issues like anti-Semitism, on sexism, on racism, on queer phobia in our field, where no one is willing to stand up and admit that they've messed up. I've messed up. And I think it's really critical that we start to develop a culture where that's okay. A friend of mine said something the other day. I heard this and I absolutely loved it because I think it's true. A culture that is demanding accountability from people that doesn't also have forgiveness is unsustainable. And I think that's really true. And I think what is very hard for us to do is we've got to balance accountability for some of these past actions in our field that are terrible, but we've also got to give people a path forward to help build and make this a better industry. Because I don't believe in the politics of disposability. I don't think someone is one mistake away from being irredeemable. I can tell you, I've lived that because so many people from Gamergate have reached out to me personally and asked for forgiveness, and I've given it to them. We have to have a culture where we can grow and move forward. The last thing I'm going to say, this is hard for me to talk about, but when I was 22, I found myself in rehab. I had a sleeping problem when I was younger, and I'd gone to a doctor and asked for some medication to get healthy. And I found myself wildly addicted to Ambien, out of control, to the point that it wrecked my life and I needed help to get off of it. And I went to rehab. And one of the first things they taught us in rehab was when you walk in that door, look around you, because 95% of the people around you are going to relapse within 5 years. Those are the odds, 80% within 1 year and 95% within 5 years. And what they told us on that first day is you're only going to get better if you're willing to examine your behavior and change it. And I think that's the most critical skill any of us can have professionally, is looking at what we're doing, thinking about it, and getting better. I've worked with good bosses and I've worked with bad bosses. And the worst bosses blame other people for when things go wrong. The good bosses are the ones that look around and hold themselves accountable. And I think the game industry is not going to get better on any of these issues until we all hold ourselves accountable. We've got to hold ourselves to higher standards. This is my challenge to everyone here today. The next time you're in a room in a meeting and it's a monoculture with only one kind of person, be that voice. Stand up, decide, I'm going to hold myself to higher standards here, and ask for more representation on that team. The next time you're in charge of a working group and the tendency is there to push things towards crunch, demand higher of yourself and what you ask of your team, and advocate for fairer working conditions and timetable for the project. The next time your community, your player base is being toxic and abusive, back up your community managers when they're asking for more help on a project. Have their back when they're asking to ban people, or if they need more information to communicate clearly to set expectations. Demand more of yourself. Treat QA people on your team like the professionals they are. The next time someone's making a joke on a team about QA, stand up, recognize that what they do matters, what they do is important. And the next time someone on your team is on the autism spectrum, make sure you're helping be an ally for them. Help educate people about that. Help be the voice, because it's easier for you than it is for somebody that's on the other side of a boot sometime. Anyway, that's my message. None of this is going to get better until we hold ourselves to higher standards. Thank you very much.
Hey, I got control of the microphone. That means I can applaud if I need to. Just a couple of things. First of all, let me begin by apologizing to Carly because I misspoke about what her title was when I introduced her, because she also has been our community manager, and that was the skill set that I wanted to emphasize. But I'm sorry I screwed up on that, Carly, and I'll try and do better.
No worries.
So, you know, I'll go back even before then. There's first of all, I posted the link to Stephen Toulouse, to Steptoe. I posted that in the chat for anybody that doesn't know who he was.
Oh, he's an amazing guy.
There's a book out about the early days of Atari, about Nolan and the late Ted Dabney, and how things kind of went off the rails beginning then. They were hiring 18 and 19-year-old young women to put the games in the boxes, while Atari was based out of a roller skating rink, and that worked out about as well as one might think it would. So we've been doing this for a long time, but it is about time that we take steps to fix it. Brianna, thank you so much for the presentation and for what you did. One thing I do want to say also, because we did talk a little bit about politics, we did make an allusion. I'm really glad that Christian joined us. And Christian, you might want to unmute because I might inadvertently offend you, but Christian and I are at very different ends of the political spectrum on some issues. I think that would probably be fair to say. I have consistently enjoyed his company, and I enjoy working with him. Something that has gone out of the politics of America today is that while I might disagree with Christian about some things, there are many fundamental things that we agree on and that are very, very, very important. And while I do not necessarily need to agree with all of his opinions, I will fight unto death to defend his right to have those opinions. So I just thought I would say that to you. I appear to have made your skin grow a little bit redder, but if so, that was my intention. But that's something that we lost. And regarding people from the gaming industry going into politics, I think the way we looked at Hollywood and Hollywood people really changed dramatically. It probably had changed before Ronald Reagan. But certainly he was a catalyst for that. We've seen people from the entertainment industry, go into politics. We've even seen, I can't think of his name, but that guy that used to have a reality TV show, he's doing something in politics now. His name is something off of card games or something like that. But I think that there is room for somebody from our industry to make that leap. To talk about the skills that are in our industry and to really change the way people look at gaming. Yeah. Even here in Vegas, people don't understand how much money there is in the games industry, and when I tell them, they're kind of surprised. So if I tell them that I work as part of a over $110 billion a year industry, they kind of look and go, so what casino is that? I will say just in fairness that when you say gaming here in Vegas, it means something else. But that said, there's even crossover. There's companies. One of the companies that's played host to a couple of IGDA events out here is the game company here in Vegas, and they make real money games. Yeah. So it is funny about that. One thing that is not obvious when you talk to people in the real money gambling games industry, and you start talking about the problems in our industry, and you start talking about crunch time and people being underpaid, they kind of look at you and go, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean crunch time? Because they ship it whenever it's ready.
Right.
And there's people go home, they leave at 5 o'clock and they go home to their families, and they know they're going to have a job the next day. Of course, the reason that they're able to do that is because addiction is a good thing, right? It's that constant cash flow.
Depends on the addiction. But yeah, I just want to back you up on that and say one thing I've just been amazed with in politics is, I think most game developers, probably everyone here in the chat today, has a skill, which is if you don't know how to do something, you're going to go read Stack Overflow until you can do it.
Yeah.
And in my experience, that is not something that exists in politics to the same degree. There is very much, you're in a very tight box. And it's like you're either, you know how to micro target ads, or you know how to shoot this, or you're a call time person, or you do the emails for donations. There's just a lot more willingness to be flexible here in the game industry. So get out there and like get involved. You're way more talented than you probably understand.
Hey, Jay. If you would unmute for a minute. Jay and I have known each other for I want to say probably 20 years. I was going to ask Jay how many times he has reinvented himself and how many different careers he's had. Jay, are you there? Or are you able to? He's got a young child, so he might not be able to. But we've all done that. Yep. This is my second or third career, depending on how you want to look at it. I had a wonderful and very fulfilling career in the healthcare financial industry. I still have a closet full of gray and blue suits. And one of the nice things about this pandemic is I now fit into them again. But I probably am not going to wear those again. So, hey, Jay, I see you're plugged in. How many times have you reinvented yourself?
How many times have I tried to get out of this industry? And
no. Staying within the industry.
Oh, a lot, but not really, because I'm always on the business end of games. Yep. It's just doing something completely different. And this whole hobby of mine that has gotten out of control with the indie game business is probably the biggest reinvention, because I never would have thought that I would be running digital conferences and podcasting and streaming as a part of what I do. But you have to do it. I mean, you can't stay in this industry for 20 some years and do the exact same thing every day. You'll go batshit crazy.
Well, first of all, I don't know anybody that's been in this industry as long as us that isn't batshit crazy. So
well, maybe that's why we're still here after all that time. That's
maybe. But you're right, and Brianna, you're right also, because you do not find that in politics. Nope. You don't find somebody saying, I did things one way all my life and now I'm going to do something the other way.
Yeah. It's a very pattern driven industry. Like X worked before, we're going to do X again. I was the first candidate to ever fundraise on Twitch, and we made a ton of money. And just I worked my butt off trying to get Democratic candidates to go on Twitch and talk to younger voters. Democrats that lost very, very close races because younger people did not show up for them. And they just would not do it. It's just a field that's it's afraid of innovation in a way that we're not.
I'm really doing this wrong then. That's the
And yet, they're the ones that we're counting on to come up with new solutions, which is kind of like, see also irony. Our conversation, our personal conversation before the meeting got started, I am always seeking out people who come at things from a different point of view than I do. It's simply because I have a very short attention span and I get bored. If we're in agreement, where are we going to go from there? So, on the other hand, that probably also explains both of my marriages. But moving on from there. Hey, we've got a small enough audience. I'm going to actually tag a couple of people. Hey, Grover, I know you're not on the board of this IGDA anymore, but I'd like to hear your thoughts about the game industry, particularly what things that you're finding in it and where you find resistance and where you don't.
So I've kind of been talking. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I've been kind of talking with Paul while we were having this meeting and everything. And, our team, most of our team comes from the nearby college that that our studio is next to. And it's kind of become a naturally diverse studio. We have a lot of people of different orientations, different genders, and we've gotten kind of what Brianna was talking about in the call. We have a wide variety of perspectives coming into our discussions, and it's come that I feel like we've really grown from that, and we have a lot of like solutions that we wouldn't have come up with had we not had a diverse team. Yeah, that's about it.
So I have a funny story about this. I'll tell it quickly. So my game studio, when we first went through and hired people, it was all women. And we were, for Rev 60, we were actually going to get rid of the combat engine originally. But there was one guy on our team. The one man in our studio that really, 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 really advocated for this one feature and pushed it. And all the women on the team wanted to focus on animation and story and invest in music and all these other parts of it. And he advocated for it. And that was the part of our game that was praised the most when we release it. So I could tell you, even running a studio with mostly women, having a dude on our team made us have a better outcome. So I firmly believe in this.
Yeah, it's not new, and it's not anything that's specific to our industry. But if you pick people that are just like you, it's really hard to point to anything that you did that was new and creative and innovative.
Yeah.
Even if you're able to accomplish that the first time, the second time it's not a repeatable phenomenon. You need people that have that moment of when everybody looks and says, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
That wasn't something that I thought about. I do believe, though, and I don't want this to become a political discussion, but I do believe that that between toxicity and difference of opinion, that there's a fairly wide range of things that fall in there.
Yeah.
So if somebody says that that they're trans and can they work at the studio, that's great. That's fine. But if you get somebody that says, listen, I need to tell you, I'm an evangelical Christian. I am an ultra Orthodox Jew. Those shouldn't be showstoppers. Shouldn't be showstoppers either.
Yeah. Can I say something about that, Larry?
Absolutely.
So this is one of the I really swear, like running for office and spending 3 years doing this, it was such a rich life experience because you spend all day, every day, having to find that spark of similarity between you and other people.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's people that are close to, like they're near your donor base and you're asking them to support you and you've got to find that connection in a second. But it's also talking to Republicans and libertarians and people with just even people in your own party with a different set of priorities. Sometimes people that don't believe in your civil rights, and you have to find that connection all day long. And I could really honestly tell you, I mean, I'm not trying to excuse what one political party in this country is doing because I think it's horrible, but there is, when it comes to the voters, the actual people that are out there doing this, there is more in common than I think Americans can really appreciate, because I've seen it up close for 3 years straight.
So one of my memorable experiences was when my sister was traveling to New York City via a plane flight from Detroit, leaving Detroit airport, and she was sitting in whatever the regular class was. I don't think they had coach then, but whatever was just regular seats, and this kind of large gruff man sat down next to her. Very gentlemanly, wearing a suit and tie, and they were talking for a while. It was Mitt Romney's father, who was the governor of Michigan.
Wow.
Who had He had taken over as CEO of Rambler American Car Company. The fact that I remember that really shows how very, very old I am. But he sold Rambler to Chrysler and really, you know, created that brand. So George Romney was sitting next to my sister, and when he got off the plane, he escorted her to meet her family who are waiting for her at the gate. That's a thing we used to have in the old days, folks, back when televisions were black and white. You could go to the gate to meet the arriving flight. And he came off and he shook my father's hand, you know, clasped my mother's hand lightly, and then reached down. I don't know how old I was, but I mean, a little kid, and shook my hand. The fact that he was a Republican and, you know, in some ways defined what Republican values were then. As head of a car company, he also had photos taken, you know, in his office with Walter Reuther, who was the head of the automobile, you know, workers union, and you know, every contract, and there was always a threat of a strike, as there was now, but they always settled it amicably, and everyone understood that the role of the CEO of the company was to retain as much money, and the role of the union was to take as much, you know, for his workers, and that was what they were doing, and it was just. That's just the way it was. No hard feelings. But there was also a sense that we were all Americans. And unfortunately, I think we've lost a lot of that. But you know, again, I'd love to see more values driven. One of the things that you mentioned about schools that teach gaming.
Yeah.
When I retire from what I do now, although, you know, I have so much time on my hands now, but when I retire from what I do now, I want to go into education. I would like to teach at a school that had a class for gaming. UNLV does. It's one of the reasons I moved out here. But the class that I would like to teach is ethical culture for the games environment. One of the classes that I took in my graduate degree, one of the classes that I took, this was in New York, was a class in business ethics, and our teacher started off by saying, "I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know about business ethics, and I'm going to do it in the first minute of the first class. Business ethics is acting in a manner today that ensures you will be in business tomorrow." Yeah. Jay knows this. Grover, Dustin, Carly. You know, I think even Christian knows this. I have an enormous Rolodex of people that I can call on, people that I have worked with for 20 years. And it's not just that I know a lot of people that I can call on. It's that they remember me in a way that I have, that there's no reason that I wouldn't go back to them and ask for their assistance. I did a presentation for Jay this morning on the philosophy on business for games, you know, the business of games, but a philosophical approach. And one of the things that I said, and I stress this to everybody, is don't be afraid to ask for help. Yeah. Put that in your, you know, in your subject line. I'm asking for your help on something. I need your advice about something. Yeah. You know, get to the point, but don't be afraid to do those things. Jay, yeah, go ahead, man.
I would add to that, you know, and you were talking about reinventing yourself. Don't be afraid to try something new as well. I mean, that's what, if you worked with me when I started the Powell Group 10 years ago now, and what we were doing then is very different than what we do now. And that's one of the things that you develop thick skin when you do business in this industry, but you know, you can't be afraid to completely throw something new against the wall and try it as well. And if you have, you know, that support base that you're talking about, because I mean, that is it. You are one of the good ones. You can do that with a little more safety than, you know, otherwise. But at the same time, you just kind of, every now and then, you have to have the nerve to just jump off the diving board.
Yep. Got to step out over that cliff. Yep.
Yeah. And kind of see what happens.
Yeah, you're 100% right about that. And that said, there are certain places that you probably should have those boundaries, though. And that's how we got onto the topic of MeToo also.
Yes.
One of the things that that I talk about with ethics and talk about morality, not in the games world, but that most of the time when people are doing something wrong, we know that we're doing something wrong. Brianna, you talked about your situation with rehab. Certainly, I have my own checkered past on that, but I will tell you the drug that I had the hardest time overcoming. I was a heavy cigarette smoker. I mean, I was a 2-pack a day guy from the time I was 14 until I was 41. There was never a moment in there that I thought to myself, well, cigarettes are really pretty good for you. I like not being able to walk up a flight of stairs at 23. I cannot tell you unless you've really been. There are people that are casual smokers. I was not one of those. I would wake up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, need to go and have a cigarette and then go back to bed. That nicotine addiction was literally calling me. That said, I was under no illusions that I was doing something that was not harmful to me. I knew it absolutely was. And I was doing something that I knew was harmful to my young children when they were small. And I did it anyway. That said, I think the same thing is true. I don't think that that those folks that have departed from Ubisoft, that there are a whole number of other places that that have gone through cleaning house. I don't think that those guys were shocked when they called it when gee, you mean I shouldn't have been doing that? I didn't realize that. I think that what they got fired for was getting caught, not for what they did.
I think, Larry, I gotta disagree with you. I would bet $1 billion in their heart of hearts they feel like the victim. I would bet almost anything about that.
Yeah, you're right that they probably do feel like the victim, but they have to go through a whole lot of logical gymnastics to get there.
Yes, they do.
I'll also say something on the other side of it, and this is something that I feel very strongly about. One of the most fun times I ever had in the game industry. Kind of surprising about this, but the first time that we were working on the political machine at Stardock. So that was 2004 was the first time that that we were working on the political machine, and I was kind of the lone liberal at Stardock, and for gameplay stuff, I'd be called into a meeting and saying, well, what would you do in this situation? What would and that was just so much fun, and one of the other things was working with people who were somewhere along the conservative libertarian spectrum was an eye-opener for me. There were a lot of times that I said, well, you're right about that. So those there are some moments like that. I don't want to monopolize the floor. Who has not had an opportunity to comment? Renee, you got anything that you'd like to add to this?
No, I think this discussion's been going really well so far. Admittedly, it's 10 p.m. for me, and I didn't sleep well last night, so I'm staying away.
You and me both. You and me both, by the way.
Well, you East Coasters can be excused. Brianna, thank you so much for the presentation. Renee, thank you so much for the introduction.
So before I bounce, I just want everyone here today to know you can reach out to me anytime for anything. You need a favor, you need just whatever. Like I do not get to talk to game industry people enough with my current job. So it is an honor to speak with all of you.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right. Talk to you
Thank you
soon.
so much for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
So, Paul, Dustin, I'm looking at you guys. What did you guys think?
Yeah, that was a powerful presentation. Am I coming through all right?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah, that was powerful. It's always interesting to hear that perspective from the point of view. Usually, and Grover kind of alluded to it in his presentation. Women did a great job of diversifying just from by nature of the local university. But we still have to escape from that stereotypical, all bunch of white guys sitting in the back room coding, right? And hearing those 5 little decisions that could have made the world of difference if there was more diversity at the table. And we have to be more, what's the right word? More
inclusive.
Not just inclusive, but more aware
okay.
of those situations. Yeah, inclusive is probably part of that. Be aware of, we need to bring these people to the table and have them there, and then give them the voice, not just have the token individual, right?
Yeah, you're 100% right about that, and solicit their opinions. Hey, Dustin, do you want to chime in? I'm curious. Coming from a Hollywood background, do you see resonances? I mean, fortunately, Hollywood has been an industry that's been absolutely safe from harassment. Sorry about that. But I'm curious as to what your thoughts were. Dustin might not be on. Hey, Carly.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So I don't know how good my audio is right now. I did take off my headphones to be comfy while listening.
Your audio is absolutely perfect.
Okay, cool. I really enjoyed hearing her talk. I've been following her social media for a while, and I got excited when she started, running for Congress. All of it is super duper valid, and I like hearing her talk about her mostly woman studio, and the fact that you do need the diverse voices there too. But I don't know, it's just kind of inspiring to think of what you can do. And like the fact that she's so easy to talk to and reach out to, and like, I don't know, motivation for what I want to see my own future as, and I'm sure other people want to see their future as.
I think so too. I continue to be hopeful, Carly, that Night Dive will be a part of that.
Oh, there you go. I'm not leaving.
Oh, good. Well, yeah. Well, we'll have to talk about that on Monday. No, only kidding. I worked for a guy that used to love greeting everybody by saying, "How long have you been with the company, not counting today?" That has stayed with me for a long time. Hey, Tom, are you still there? May have lost Tom. Anybody else would like to offer an opinion?
Are you talking to me?
I was, Tom. You did that. You did that with the perfect taxi driver voice.
You talking to me? Well, yeah, I really enjoyed that presentation, and I was in LA for a very, very long time, and doing film, and started at Atari though prior to that, so I'm kind of coming back around.
Yeah.
Doing the education thing, but you'd be surprised how politically correct the film industry was for very long. It was I worked at Rhythm and Hughes, and that was probably one of the most nationally diverse, racially diverse, sexually diverse companies I've ever seen. Having to go from that back here to like Ford Motor, where it's like all we want to do is be hard ass Republican assholes. It was a shock. It was terrible. But there, it was like I had the most satire, nationalist satire I would get would be being in a cubicle mate with a guy from Paris who would make fun of the accents of people from Montreal. Okay, so it was pretty integrated. It was very different.
Let's face it. We all make fun of the accents of people from Montreal. So
yeah. I know. I get that. And I want to thank you too for letting me know that Jews were in the Southern Army. That was the Confederacy. That was a big eye opener. So
I am a collector of obscure historical facts, especially ones that make other people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, that really kind of did. Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, it was very different. Yeah, being on the West Coast is not like being in the Midwest.
Michigan is a funny place. You know, I lived in Ann Arbor, that you know, very, very liberal there. But I always tell people, it's not even that it's not that Michigan elected a governor that poisoned the people that live in Flint. It's that they then reelected him because that kind of seemed like a good idea. You know.
Yeah.
You know, it's also hard. I don't think people outside, you know, truly the Rust Belt understand how bad the economy got. I don't think people that, you know, I try to explain to people in Vegas that what happened with GM and Flint is it's not like a casino closed. It's like all the casinos closed and moved out of town in Vegas. It's like the Strip was just empty buildings. You know, that's the way Flint got hit. So, but you know, but that's kind of, people don't understand that. It's one of the things about America. We're so big that it's hard to, you know, to understand what the culture is in you know, in the state of Washington versus the state of Florida, and that's always been a problem. It's also always been our strength. So, hey Dustin, if you come back on, just let me know. Let me share an opinion with you. Samantha, I'm glad you joined us. What are your thoughts about this?
Let me turn off my AC there real quick.
Sure.
Yeah, no, what Brianna was saying about seeing, how do I say this? About if you're unhappy with what you're seeing, go out and make it yourself, right? That's essentially the exact same reason I went out to I started making games, is because I was seeing a gap of inclusive content out there, and I was like, well, you know what, nobody else is making it, screw it, I'm gonna do it myself.
So go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, so when I say that I really do seek out people with whom I have certain things in common, but who are not necessarily. So, you know, one of the people that I have a significant amount of overlap with, that we know people in common, but we've never met, is Layla Johnson, CEO of Mohawk Games. Hey, Christian, did you ever work with Layla over? Well, go ahead.
I said she's wonderful. As I'm in the Baltimore area, I've had the opportunity to talk with her several times, and it's really interesting to see how they have done efforts to improve the culture of their studio and success that they've had on that forefront.
So Renee, do you know where I was headed with my major difference with Layla?
I don't know. Please tell me.
So our religious backgrounds are a little bit different.
Right.
So it was really funny because Layla posted a thing just earlier that being in the broader definition of a Semite, she was amused by the mispronunciation of what some people might call Yosemite Park, but our president correctly named as Yosemite Park. And I couldn't help but post to Layla that I wasn't offended either, and that if there's any definition of anything that allows me to be a member of the same group as her, then I'm kind of honored by that. But you know, if you know, I mean, I've been writing about stuff about Jewish history and culture for decades. But I'm also, it's also very important to me that we understand that a lot of that history, a lot of that shared history, is with people who are Muslim. So, Christian, I was going to ask you, did you ever work with Layla over at Mohawk?
I did not.
They do some interesting things. In addition to to everything else, and Soren is Layla's husband, or the Soren Johnson is Layla's husband, and is kind of an industry legend. I don't know if they're an Unreal shop or whether they have I think they might have their own custom engine. I know that they were doing some stuff with AMD for a while, but regardless of any of that stuff, Layla's husband, Layla is brilliant in her own right. And Layla's husband is also one of the more important people in the games industry and strategy games these days. So just want to throw that out. And again, if you end up in a room full of people that are identical with you, that agree with you on all your political positions and all your it's kind of a quick conversation, yeah, exactly. You don't that's unfortunately the echo chamber that we can find ourselves in. Cool. Hey, Carissa, I wanted to give you a chance also to share a little bit of how things are going for you and how things are at school. Are you still in school, right?
Yeah. Well, technically, I just graduated this semester, so.
Congratulations on that. How's everything going in terms of the gaming world? I do miss Ann Arbor, except for the 6 months a year when it gets cold. How's the game community going, and how's that IGDA branch holding up?
Oh, there we go. Good old tech issues for you.
Yep. Wouldn't be a conference call without that. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what you guys heard. I'm not sure if my mic was on for all of it, but I'll start from the beginning.
Start from the beginning. Yeah, go ahead.
So I did just graduate from Lawrence Tech this last semester. It's pretty wild. You wanted me to talk about what again?
The games industry and how things are going. On the personal side, how things are going in the Michigan area.
I think things are going pretty good. We've had a lot of really good moves towards seeing more diversity, especially around Lawrence Tech. When I first came here, I'm in game programming, and that was my degree. I was the only woman I knew in the program of like 100, and now I'm seeing a lot of younger women and younger people of other genders coming in and actually being in game programming, which is amazing. I think we've got a lot of big growth, a lot of things still, to work on, but it's been really good seeing things getting closer to good.
Cool. And everything going well. Everything going well at the Michigan IGDA.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard. We also have, in addition to the IGDA Ann Arbor, which you used to run, we now have IGDA Detroit as well.
Help Mars get that set up before I left.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
Every other person is
I don't tell everybody everything. I save some secrets.
Yeah, that's fair.
I do follow along. I kind of lurk on all the Discord channels, so I do kind of follow along with that. And Mars, Corbin, and Austin are still friends of mine via other social media. So I kind of keep tabs on everybody.
Yeah,
well, cool. Listen, I'm gonna kind of wrap this up. If anybody has any last comments to make, please feel free. Otherwise, we're going to be. This has been recorded. We're going to be posting it on YouTube shortly. Shortly being in the next couple of days, and I'll send the link out to everybody, and you can share it. Again, thank you so much for attending.
I got one more comment. One more comment. They have not announced whether or not they're going to allow people back on campuses yet here in Michigan. Just so you know, they keep saying safety is top concern, but they don't say yes or no if they're coming back on campus. I'm assuming no.
I don't think anybody knows about that, and I think we're all nationwide wrestling with that. That's going to be a tough thing. I'll also say I think that something's going to happen in terms of realizing that a lot of education can be done virtually. So there you go. Guys, again, thank you so much for attending. Thank you for making this as exciting as it was, and have a great evening.
Thanks for hosting, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate you.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye.